علي. اللهم صل على وآل جل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيب قلوب العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله وسلم عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة ويا عبرة المؤمنين، غريب مظلوم عطشان شهيد كربلاء، ويا مسلوب العمامة والرداء، ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم، أمن من لجأ والتجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: والذين آمنوا واتبعتهم ذريتهم بإيمان ألحقنا بهم ذريتهم وما ألتناهم من عملهم من شيء، كل امرئ بما كسب رهين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. عطروا أفواهكم بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. A second salawat for the love of our Mawla Abi Abdullah al-Hussein. A third salawat for the hastening of the reappearance of our Mawla Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. May our souls be sacrificed to him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Parenting has always been one of the most challenging things to do. Being a parent is one of the most challenging objectives to fulfill, especially in this day and age where you have a rise in social media addiction, a rise in mental health negativities, a rise in things that are negative towards the health, the mental and spiritual health of our youth. It's very challenging to raise youth in this day and age, and especially abroad, especially in the West. There's a rise in single-parent households, especially households that are led by single mothers. They face specific challenges, economic challenges, psychological challenges. Besides that, there was research done by Pew that found that 76% of American parents said they were concerned for their children's mental health. And almost half of those parents, they said they also felt judged by their spouse in how they were raising their children. There was a division between parents and parenting styles. But one of the most alarming trends found in this research is that about 18% of American parents are concerned about their children's religious development. Only 18% of them are concerned about their children's religious development, while over 88%, their major concern was the economic stability and the professional stability of their children after adulthood. That was their main concern. And that's something that needs to be spoken about. That's something that has to be looked into deeper. That way our parents, especially the parents of this generation, are able to use the tools they have at their disposal to raise their children efficiently. And we have the knowledge from the Quran, from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, on how to do this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Parents naturally worry about their children. It's something normal to worry about your child. You're always worried about their safety, their well-being, many things that concern their life. You constantly worry about your child. That's a normal part of being a parent. Research done by the CDC found that 4 out of 10 high school kids felt persistent sadness or hopelessness that came in the way of engaging in their day-to-day activities. It made them want to stop engaging in their daily activities, their regular day-to-day life. That's a cause for concern. Parents have the right to worry. Over 57% of those who said they felt sad, felt hopeless, were female, were young ladies. And young ladies, they face a specific concoction of factors that are pressured towards them, that make them feel more pressured than their male counterparts. They have issues they deal with when it comes to their image, their self-esteem, with their feeling that their self-worth or their value is associated with their physical appearance, how they look, how they present themselves. And that's totally false. A woman's value is not in her physical appearance. That's not where she derives her value. But when you have young ladies spending prolonged hours on social media, taking a look at influencers or Instagram models that are completely photoshopped, completely altered, they have a different perception of natural beauty. They're confused. They don't know what natural beauty should be. We have to understand these young ladies are going through these problems. These are real issues that they face, my dear loved ones. And moms, they naturally worry more than fathers. This research also proved that mothers, they were more worrisome towards their children than fathers. It's a natural instinct. It's a maternal instinct. But we also have to let our mothers know that you have to work hand in hand with the father in order to solve issues, to solve problems. It's not a one-team effort. It's not a one-person effort. It's a team effort. Although the father might have a different way of doing things, it doesn't mean he's not worried about his child. It doesn't mean he doesn't value the child the same way you do, because he doesn't exude emotions in the same way you do. He might be more logical, more analytical. And it really depends on every couple, but that's what was found in this research. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And like I stated previously, over 80% of parents, their main concern for their children was their professional career, was their economic success, was their economic stability after adulthood. And that makes us question what our goals are in life, what our goals should be as parents. our goal simply for our kids to go to Ivy League universities, graduate from Yale, from Harvard, from Stanford, from Georgetown, whatever it may be? Is that our goal as parents? I want my child, my youth, to grow to be the most educated individual in the community. Does it stop there? Or is it important to also have my youth understand that there is an akhirah, there is a hereafter? The professional development is great, it's required, it's needed, but that's not where you stop. That's not where it ends. Because after this life, there is another life. I have to allow my kids to understand this. If my kids constantly hear me preach to them, you need to get good grades. You have to get a 4.0. You have to take these extracurricular activities. You have to have a really good resume. You have to have experience, get internships. But at the same time, I don't speak to them about reading Quran. I don't speak to them about making their prayers on time. I don't speak to them about attending majalis. I don't speak to them about being a Husseini, what it means to be a Husseini. The revolution of Al-Imam al-Hussein. We have work to do as parents. If the parents in the United States, over 88% of them, they're only concerned about their children's professional success, that means we have work to do, my dear loved ones. A lot of work to do. Parents worry for many reasons, and there's a validation to that. It's a valid point to be worried. You see, there's a sharp increase in negative mental health in youth. As I mentioned before, the problems that come with social media addiction, spending prolonged hours on the phone. These kids enter into a world that is not reality. They're looking at their phones, and when they look at their phones, they feel that these influencers or the people that are popular on their page, they're living a life that's full of happiness, full of wealth, full of something that is leading them to be content in life. But that's not true, because in most instances, studies have shown that individuals that acquire wealth at an early age without hard work are unable to manage that wealth. And that leads to problems. That leads to problems with substance use. That leads to problems with addiction, with anxiety, with depression. They're sitting on their phone, they're making videos, and all of a sudden they become millionaires. People are throwing attention at them. And this has become normalized to our youth, to where we feel, as youth, we feel like this is something awesome. This is something cool. This is something I want to pursue. I want to have millions of followers on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, and that gives me validation. If I post something on Instagram and I get a lot of likes, that means I'm valuable. Those likes have been proven to induce serotonin and induce dopamine into the brains of these young children, to where they feel a hit of happiness. It's quick happiness. It's rapid happiness. So they don't feel like they have to struggle and go through hard work in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel happy. And that might not entirely be their fault. It might be our fault for not allowing them to feel engaged, allowing them to understand their faith better in a way that suits them, in a language that they can understand, my dear loved ones. Bullying is also a reason that parents are left concerned. When you have cyberbullying especially, you have youth that pick on each other due to their appearance, due to how they show up to class, due to their athletic performance, for example. And these things cause youth to begin to feel that they are valued for the wrong things. They're not valued for who they are as people, who they are ethically, morally. But instead, They think that if they show up to school with new Jordans, if they show up to school with brand new shoes, right? Or that new outfit, then everyone's going to think they're cool. That's going to validate them. But that's not the truth, my dear loved ones. When we see our children be bullied, though, we have to take action. There's something we need to do. If you feel like you don't have the resources and the outlets that allow you to make your child feel whole, to make your child feel content with what they have and feel that their value is not derived from materials, then you need to seek a support group within the community. And the most important thing is allowing the community to have a strong youth program, my dear loved ones. Gun violence is also something that plagues our country. I know that certain communities are worse than others, but it's also something we fear because mass violence and mass shootings in 2021 alone, there was around 700 mass shootings in the United States. That's a problem that has to be spoken about as well. When you fear to send your children to school, maybe there might be something that happens to them at school. There might be something that occurs when they're away from home, and you have to concern yourself with that. That's an extra layer that allows parents to worry. But as parents, we have to understand that when we allow our children out into the community, out into schools, out to pursue their education, we leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them. My dear loved ones, the most important thing to protect your children, as I mentioned in previous nights, is sadaqah. Sadaqah is an insurance policy that protects you before damage occurs. Not only sadaqah, ayatul kursi. You want all of your children to memorize ayatul kursi by heart. That way when they leave home and they get in the car and they go to school, they recite ayatul kursi. And this is a shield. This is a godly shield, a spiritual shield. And the rest we leave up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't sit and wonder what might happen, what will get in the way. No, we have to continue to live our lives. We can't get caught up in the negativities that might occur. My dear loved ones. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Another point that concerns our parents, we as parents are very concerned this generation because of the divergent gender norms. You have certain ideologies that are tainting the minds of our children, that are confusing them about gender. Something as simple as understanding there's two genders, a man and a woman, and that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to live our lives. Children are now being confused of what gender means, what gender looks like. That's an issue. That's something that concerns us. What if my children are learning the wrong things in school? When do I take action? When do I take a step forward and say, I don't want my children learning this nonsense. I don't want my children to have their young minds tainted to understand that maybe it's fine for them to identify with a different gender. While it's extremely not fine, it's something that's not natural. And you see, research has proven that most individuals that have a problem with their gender, they have a dysphoria with their gender, they have mental illnesses. That's a mental illness. That's an imbalance within certain parts of their brain, which leads them to feel, I'm not the way I was born. The way Allah created me is not who I am. That's an illness, my dear loved ones. You have to allow your children to understand it's not okay for someone to teach them it's fine to choose whatever gender you want. Identify with whatever gender you want. And وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, when it comes to same-sex relationships, it's even worse. It's even more deadly. And you have to understand you need to take a stance. As a youth yourself, if you're put into a situation or position where you're expected to conform to these things, you take a stand. You say, no, I don't conform to that. This is not what I believe in. This is not what I identify with. No, we're not going to harass anyone. We don't transgress upon anyone, but we draw a line. We say that we don't condone this action. This is a grave sin. It's an abomination. It's an indecency. These are the words we use. Not words like LGBTQ that confuse us. That's just a bunch of letters. We use the word sin, a vile act, an abomination, to send the message across of that's what it is. It's a problem. My dear loved ones. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Some things that we need to understand as parents to become effective parents is that there's no such a thing as perfect parents, right? All parents are different. You can't look to different people, different couples, and different parents and say they're doing things this way, I should emulate them. Or I feel like I have the need to compete with them. You see, sometimes, and actually this is proven by research. Pew did research to the same group of parents and they asked them certain questions. They found that parents, they felt that the way their children acted and their children's professional achievements and their children's educational achievements reflected onto them. And sometimes that might lead us to act incoherently. We begin to act in a way that doesn't make sense because we start to compete. We see our kids as, for example, objects like they're trophies, for example, right? My child has to get a 4.0. And if they don't, then I don't really know how to communicate why I want them to get a 4.0. You can't compete with other parents and feel like you have to be the perfect parent in the community. You have to do what you need to do to allow your kids to grow up healthy in a good environment and to become mu'mineen and mu'minat. And yes, their academic success is important, but you can't feel so attached to the fact that their way of acting and their success reflects onto you. Because then that becomes a reason for you to drive their success just for you to look better in front of the community. And that's not what you want to do. That is going to lead your children to feel like you're not really there for them and for their emotions, for their success. Rather, you want to use their success as a platform. And that's not something that's healthy. And that might not be your intention, by the way. That might not be the reason why you want your children to work hard, but sometimes these things are subconscious. They're things we have to think deeply about. We have to ask ourselves questions in order to allow us to be better parents. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. You have to allow your children to not live in a Muslim bubble. You don't want to shield them to where they live exclusively in a Muslim bubble. Because one day they're going to go out into the real world. They're going to experience life. And that life might test their faith. If they are sheltered completely, imagine someone who lives by themselves, right on the outskirts of town, never comes into contact with anyone. And the first time they go to a grocery store, they're going to catch the flu, catch the common cold, catch all kinds of viruses and bacteria because their immune system hasn't been built properly to interact with others. That's the same way that it could be when your child is completely sheltered or shielded and lives in a Muslim bubble. You don't want them to live that way. You want to ingrain Muslim values within them. You want them to feel proud of their identity. And the most important part of them not living in a Muslim bubble is because you want them to have a strong identity. When it comes time to go out in public and pray in an airport, pray at school, pray at university, pray at the workplace, You don't want them to feel weird or singled out or feel like, you know what, maybe I should reconsider. Maybe I should go somewhere more private, somewhere absolutely nobody will see me. If they start to learn at an early age that it's fine to pray anywhere. You can pray at school. You can pray wherever you need to pray. You're not sheltering them in a Muslim bubble. That strengthens their identity, my dear loved ones. That strengthens who they are as people. So we have to allow them to experience life outside of home, outside of the community, and keep their attachment to their faith. Keep their strength with their iman, my dear loved ones. If you're a single parent, my dear loved ones, you need to look to create a support group, especially single mothers. The community has to have resources for these parents to fall back on, because it's definitely a struggle to raise children by yourself. A man or a woman. For women, it might be more difficult because they're economically disadvantaged and mentally disadvantaged at the same time. It's many factors that come down at the same time. It's difficult. You have to, as a community, create resources and outlets for these single mothers to be able to have a support group. If they need someone to look after the kids while they work, you need to provide that. If you need someone for them to talk to speak to within the community, a group of young ladies who are able to talk to them about what they're going through, that also has to be provided. If you're a single parent, don't feel like you have to go through everything by yourself. There are people that are willing to help. There are people that would love to help to receive that ajr, that thawab, my dear loved ones. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There are many teachings that the Ahlul Bayt ingrain within our lives when it comes to parenting. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith, he says, the parents who kiss their child, Allah will write for them 1 hasana. Parents who make their children happy, Allah will make them happy on the day of judgment. And parents who teach their children the Quran, Allah will clothe them with garments of nur, that on the day of judgment, the entirety of people in the akhirah are blinded by that nur. We have to not be afraid to show our children affection. Hug your child, kiss your child. It's not a weakness if you're a father and you give your son a kiss. Trust me, that's not a problem. That allows him to feel whole, that allows him to feel valued. Hug your child. Make them feel valued with affection, with love, with care. If you didn't have that as a child yourself, well, it's time to make a change as a parent. You be that one to change that. Ingrain that into your family. That way your kids, your grandkids, take a turn. There's nothing wrong with that, my dear loved ones. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he gives guidelines to parents. He tells parents, Allah has mercy upon parents that assist their children in being obedient, that help their children in being good mu'mineen and mu'minat. That means allowing them to have an environment where their religion is nurtured, their iman is nurtured, they're taught the right things. You don't just let them out and release them out into the free world with no knowledge of their faith. Because then when they get into sinfulness, when they fall victim to traps of this dunya, that might be our fault as parents, my dear loved ones. Allah has mercy upon parents who assist their child in obedience. Furthermore, you have to praise your child when you see them engaging in good acts. When you see your child praying on time, doing wudu, engaging in reciting Quran, whatever it may be, praise your child. Pull them aside, tell them, I'm proud of you. I love what you're doing. This fills my heart with joy. Hug them, kiss them. That way it reinforces these positive actions in their life. And lastly, you have to be forgiving with their shortcomings. We're not perfect. At one point, we were all children. As parents, we went through our own mistakes in our own life. Let's not forget those days. You have to be forgiving with your child's shortcomings. That way it doesn't come into the way of you allowing them to feel your tenderness and love. If your child makes a mistake, big or small, sometimes you're going to feel betrayed. As a parent, you're going to feel so much pain. If they make a big mistake, you feel all these years I spent, all these hours I stayed up, all that time, and this is how I'm repaid. We have to not allow ourselves to get into these emotions, these spaces, because then we feel like we have a personal vendetta with our child. When you feel that pain, that anger, that comes in between you and parenting and being an affectionate, loving parent. When your child makes a mistake, yes, you should be stern. You should discipline them. But there's a time in which you have to depart. You have to forgive. You have to move on, my dear loved ones. The Prophet, one day, he's approached by an Arab tribesman. This man comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And he comes to the Prophet, he tells him, I have 10 boys, 10 children. Rasulullah, I've never kissed my boys a single day of my life. And he feels like this is something that makes him confident, something that makes him masculine or manly, right? And Rasulullah looks at him and tells him, he who does not show mercy to the created will not be shown mercy by the Creator. You think that's something good? You think that's something you should be proud of, that you don't kiss your children, your boys? Absolutely not. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would always kiss Al-Imam Al-Hasan, Al-Imam Al-Husayn. We know how he would treat his grandsons. Al-Imam Al-Husayn would play with his grandfather would hold him, would kiss him. He would place him on top of his chest. There's narrations that when the Prophet one day had Al-Imam Al-Husayn on top of his chest, he began to cry. He began to sob. They asked him, "Oh Rasulullah, why are you crying? Why are you sobbing? This is a beautiful moment between you and your grandson." One day, this young man is on top of the chest of the Prophet, and one day, Shimr is on top of his chest. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. On the day of Ashura, my dear loved ones, Qasim, he goes on the night of Ashura. About Abdullah, he's showing his companions their place in heaven. He's showing Joan, he's showing Abbas, he's showing Hur. He calls his son Ali al-Akbar. He tells Ali al-Akbar, this is your place in heaven, my dear boy, my beloved son. This is where you're going to end up after your shahada. And Qasim sees this, he's waiting, he's anticipating, he wants to see his name called by his uncle. He sees his uncle does not call him. He's depressed, he's sad. He goes out of the tent, he leaves the tent, he goes by himself, he's sitting by himself in that darkness of that night. And he's seen by his mother, Ramla. Ramla comes to him, she asks him, "My son, Qasim, why are you crying? Why are you sad? Why are you here by yourself? Why are you not with your cousin Ali al-Akbar?" He tells her, "My dear mother, it's the first time I ever felt my uncle differentiate between me and my cousins. My entire life, I had no father around. My father was Hussein. Today he differentiated between me and Ali al-Akbar." She tells him, "How, my dear son?" He tells her, when it was time for Al-Imam Al-Hussein to show his companions their place in Jannah. He called Ali al-Akbar. He showed his place in Jannah. He didn't show me my place in Jannah. At that point, I felt differentiated. My heart was broken. She tells him, my beloved Qasim, he's scared for you. He doesn't want to lose you. He allows his son Ali al-Akbar to be fed to those swords, but he doesn't want to feed you to those swords. He's scared for your life. Allahu Akbar. She tells him, don't worry, tomorrow is Ashura. You can ask your uncle again. The day of Ashura comes. Qasim goes and he approaches Al-Imam al-Hussein. Al-Imam al-Hussein just saw his son Ali al-Akbar be slaughtered. Ali al-Akbar is gone. Al-Imam al-Hussein, he just took Ali al-Akbar back to the tent. He lays him down in the tent. Qasim comes to his uncle Hussein. He tells him, Ya Aba Abdullah, allow me to go and sacrifice myself. Allow me to go and join Ali al-Akbar in Jannah. He tells him, I can't, my dear son. I can't. You're all your mother has. Your father is gone. You're going to be the man of the family when I'm gone, when everyone is gone. Allahu Akbar. Qasim at this point, he feels extremely depressed. He feels extremely broken. He remembers one day his father, Al-Imam al-Hasan, he left him a letter. He left him a message. He told him, my son Qasim, if you ever feel like this world is against you, if you ever feel depressed, open this letter, read this letter. He opens that letter, he reads, Assalamu alayka ya Qasim. If you ever see your uncle Hussein in Karbala on the day of Ashura, he goes out and he yells, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. That is going to be your day of Shahada, my dear son Qasim. Take this letter to your uncle Hussein. Allahu Akbar. He's happy, he's filled with joy. Qasim runs to the tent of Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He gives this letter to him. Al-Imam al-Hussein looks at this letter. He sees the handwriting of his brother Hassan. He's overfilled. He's filled with sorrow, with pain. He remembers his moments, his life with his brother Hassan. His brother, he reads the letter. He says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. My dear son, Qasim, go and say farewells. Go and say al-wida' to your mother Ramla, to your aunt Zainab. Qasim goes, he tells his mother, prepare me for battle, O mother. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. She takes the clothes of Al-Imam al-Hasan. She folds them for this young child. They're too big. They don't fit him. She puts the armor of his father on him. She gives him the sword of his father. He goes out to the enemies. He goes out to the enemies. He begins fighting valiantly with valor. At one point, his Na'al, his sandals are ripped. An enemy of Allah attacks him on his head. He falls to the ground. Allahu Akbar. Ayna al-munadiya wa qasimah wa sayyidah. He says, Adrikni ya am ya Aba Abdullah. Come to my rescue. My uncle Aba Abdullah goes to his rescue. He sits there. He holds him. Qasim is bleeding profusely. He looks towards him. He sees him. He tells him, I have to take you back to the camp. I have to take you back to the tent. I can't let your mother see you. Your mother brought you for a wedding. When she brought you, she packed henna with her. She packed candles with her. I can't let her see her son in this stage. He takes him back to the camp. He lays him down beside Ali al-Akbar. Aba Abdullah is in the middle. Ali al-Akbar is on one side. Qasim is on one side. Allahu Akbar. As Sayyid Zainab, she comes into the tent. She sees her brother Hussein. She sees that his back has been broken. Allahu Akbar. These boys, they're like stars without their light. She tells him, my beloved Hussein, I have one request from you. He tells her, what is it that you want? She can't find it within her heart to talk to her brother. What does she want? She tells him, Hussein, my dear brother, allow for Ramla to enter the tent. She wants to see her boy Qasim. She can't grieve on her own. She can't feel comfortable. She wants to remove her hijab. She wants to beat her chest. She wants to scream and wail for her son Qasim. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. My dear loved ones, raise your hands in dua. اللهم إننا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا Allah. Oh Allah, those who are dealing with cancer, with diabetes, with mental illnesses, with any illnesses, oh Allah, grant them complete shifa and recovery. Oh Allah, grant us the shafa'ah of Aba Abdullah. Oh Allah, grant us the khidmah of Aba Abdullah. Oh Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Aba Abdullah. Please rise to recite Dua al-Faraj. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
To all the reciters, Maghrib time tonight is at 9:04, so we must stop at 9:04, please. Shah Sahab, aap pehle aa jaye. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
Qasim,